6th verse, the B part of 6. Restore all that was hers. That was the king telling his servants. And all the fruit of the field since the day that she left until now, restored unto her. For a thought for today, don't get left out. Don't get left out. So many times, if we're not careful in the world in which we live, everything is done on a timely basis, whereby if we don't make it to our doctor's appointment on time,
come on now,
they give us about a 15-minute window.
Yeah.
And if you don't make it on time, they reschedule you. Now, they'll make you sit in their waiting room 30 minutes to an hour even before they even call you back. Then you'll sit in the exam room 20 minutes to 30 minutes before the doctor comes in. But if you don't make it there on time, you'll be left out. There are so many different events that happens. And they tell you that the doors are going to open at said time. And the doors are going to close at said time. And if you're not there at the opening time, between the pocket of window of time that they give you to arrive, the doors are closed and you can't get in. God told Noah to build an ark. Noah began this journey that took 120 years to complete. While he was building, he was also informing all the people in which he knew, and as far as his voice could reach, through messengers, through gossip, through family members, that it's gonna rain. Because the sins of humanity, man, had reached the nostrils of God, and the stench thereof caused God to react. And God informed him to make an ark that would rescue those who believed from the storm. Well, needless to say, you all are Bible scholars and you read your Bible on a regular basis. You found out that only Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives believed. Noah had informed them that it was going to be one door, one way in. Now, there are those entertainers, Oprah Winfrey, that say there is no way that a loving God, and you may feel that way as well, that a loving God, as much as he loves humanity and say he loves us, that he was going to give us one way to get in. He gave us one way to get in, as he gave Noah and his family and all the people that didn't enter one way to get in. Then the rain started. The lightning began to flash. The evidence of the rain had begun. Things that had never happened before has started to happen. And the people tried to get in. Gospel singers of old. So they knocked on the window and they knocked on the door. And Noah informed them, God got the key and you can't get in. He couldn't open the door to allow them to get in. They waited too late. And the rain came. The flood rose. And humanity, except for 8 people, died. Don't get caught in the situation whereby you waited too late and you're now left out. Don't stop serving the Lord. Whatever it is that you do, don't stop serving the Lord. Whatever it is that you go through, don't stop serving the Lord. Humanity have a habit, habitual habit. The moment that things happen in their lives, they cut God off. And they start trying to survive on their own. Well, I want you to understand that our only survival is God. Don't stop doing that which you were doing with God and serving Him, because tragedy comes. There were those who were before Corona. They were going to their local assembly on a regular basis. Before Corona, they were giving in their tithes and offerings on a regular basis. Before Corona, they weren't taking jobs on Sunday. Before Corona, they were being obedient to the will of God. But since Corona has given a sense of element of excuse for those individuals who were looking for an excuse. One thing that I've come to understand in this world is that if you're looking for an excuse to quit, you can always find a reason why. If you're looking for a reason to stop giving in tithes, there's always a light bill, gas bill, a child that needs something, a sickness that comes up, a bill that's due. There's always something that can cause you to stop. If you're looking for a reason to stop coming into the house of worship, the news tell you that churches is where people contract the majority of their diseases. When you listen and you hear about mega churches at large have already decided that they're not even thinking about going back into a regular way of worship until after the first of the year. Well, that was the same thing they said last year. People have decided that because the world has given us an excuse to abandon worship, it's okay to do so. When you don't hear from the Lord, don't stop doing what you were doing the last time that you heard Him. When you get to the place where you feel like your prayers are not being answered, and you haven't heard the voice of the Lord in a long time, do like Andre Krauss did when he penned the song, "Take me back, O Lord. Take me back, O Lord, to the place where I first received you, where I first met you, where I first started doing your will." If you're confused about what it is that you're supposed to do, I'm talking to you right now. If you're confused about whether or not you're supposed to worship God. If you're confused about whether or not God's hearing you, if you're confused about whether or not you should continue to pray, if you're confused about whether or not you should continue to come, if you are confused about whether or not you should continue to give, if you're confused about whether or not you should continue to fellowship, just go back to what you were doing before you stop hearing from him. God's still in the same place that he was. Yeah. Don't let change you. Don't let the things that's happening in the world today make you a different Christian. Don't let change you into thinking and believing that God is not hearing you. God is still on the throne. And he still desires his people to worship him.
Yeah.
And so therefore we worship him in spirit and truth. So whatever it is that you were doing in serving the Lord before, the encouragement is go back to doing what you were doing in serving the Lord. Now wait a minute, hold up. If you weren't serving him and you were just coming before, this is encouragement to start serving. If you were serving him before and you slowed down or stopped, this is encouragement to get back on. You ever notice that for those Brother Thompson that riding on buses, they're always looking for their place to get off. Very few folk you have to put off. Most folk looking for a place to get off. Corona gave the world a place to get off at. But God is saying that your journey is not complete. We got to understand that this world is not our home. And the things that affect the world has no impact on us because we're citizens of a land and a place, and we have a home that's not made by the hands of man, eternal in the heavens. So don't let change you. There's a better day ahead. There's a better day coming. As you go through the storms of life, know this, that no storm lasts forever. Yeah. Your future looks better than your past. No matter how difficult your days and your nights have been, your future is better than your past. Here's a woman that we talked about in today's message. This Shunammite woman who was in a situation, in a predicament in chapter 4. One of the things that happened, how she got the relationship with Elijah, is that Elijah would pass through her village on a regular basis. And she encouraged him to turn in to her place because she wanted to show hospitality to him. And in showing hospitality to him, she got with her husband. And that's a whole different sermon within itself. She got with her husband and she asked him that the man of God has come through our place. I have a desire to build a place for him to turn into. And so what she did was, with her husband's permission and agreement, they built a place for Elijah to turn into, a room onto their home. And when Elijah would come through her village and turn into her house, she would give him food and hospitality. Elijah asked his servant to ask the woman what it is that we could do for her. She let him know that there's nothing that I desire from you. He wanted to ask her what it is that we could do for you. And she said, he noticed that she didn't have and the children. And he told her that this time next year, you'll have a son. And just like he told her a year passed, and she had a son. The son grew and went out into the field to visit with his father. I'm just getting you to where we're going. And when he went out into the field to visit with his father, because sometimes the things that we do now will cause us to miss out on things that's going to come later. And sometimes the things that we do now will benefit us for the things that's going to come later. Don't get left out. This particular woman, son, went into the field, and he said to his father, "My head." His head began to ache. His father got one of the servants to take him back to the house. Needless to say, when he arrived at the house, the son died. The woman decided that she was going to take him and lay him on the bed that Elijah laid on. Take him to the room that Elijah stayed in. And then she went to her husband. That's a whole different message. And asked her husband for permission to give her permission to leave with one of the servants and go and find Elijah. When she found Elijah, what she found out was that she had arrived there at a time when he wasn't coming through her village. In fact, her husband had already told her it's not the full moon, or it's not time for him to come through. But she went and found him anyway. And the question was asked of her, is all well? And she didn't complain about the things that was happening. She didn't complain about the things that was going on. She said, all is well. See, the thing that we need to understand is, no matter how bad our situation gets, no matter how bad things happen in our lives, don't let what's happening in us and to us change us. She said, all is well. And then Elijah asked about the boy. And she said the boy had died. He was at home. Elijah sent his servant, gave his servant his staff, and told his servant, when you get there, here's what I want you to do. Lay my staff upon the boy. And on your journey to him, don't salute anybody. And if anybody salutes you, don't stop and have a conversation with them. In other words, take care of business. Elijah told the woman, God didn't show me this about your son. I didn't know that this was going to happen to you. Don't you know that God don't show you everything? But that doesn't mean that God's not using you in everything. Don't you know that God don't give you all the answers? That doesn't mean that God don't have all the answers. Don't you know that God don't just heal you all at one time? Sometimes people are healed right now. Other times they're healed through the process of medicines. What Elijah told his servant was, go ahead of us. When Elijah made it to the house, Elijah went up into the room. Said Elijah laid on top of the boy, face to his face, hands to his hands, and laid on the boy and began to pray. And God brought the boy back. And when God brought the boy back, he said the boy sneezed 7 times. And then he gave the boy back to his mother. Well, you would have thought that was the end of the Shunammite woman's story. Well, that wasn't the end of the story. The Shunammite woman had another visitation from Elijah. Elijah told the Shunammite woman in chapter 8 There's going to be a famine in this land. And the famine, when it comes into this land, it's going to put the land in a situation where nothing's going to grow. The situation is going to be a bad situation for life. You and your family need to find someplace else to live. So what she did was she took him at his advice. I wish I had a few folk that would take the preacher at his advice. She took him at his advice, and she went to live with the Philistines. And she lived there for the whole 7 years. And after living there for the whole 7 years, when the 7 years was up, she went back to her homeland. And when she arrived back at her homeland, she inquired of the king to give her back her land. Well, I want to say the king was talking to Elijah's servant. And he was asking Elijah's servant, he said, what had Elijah been up to? The servant began to tell him that Elijah has been up to healing, bringing a dead son back to life. Elijah's been up to doing the work in the will of God. He said, in fact, there was a woman whose son had died, and Elijah brought her son back to her. While he was talking, while he was talking to the king, the woman and her son showed up. The servant said to the king, here she is right now. And so the king asked the woman, tell me your side of the story. She told him the exact same thing that had happened. The king got one of his servants and told his servant, here's what I want you to do. I want you to restore to her everything that was hers. I want you to restore to her everything that she had left. I want you to restore to her everything that she went, good God Almighty, that she went away from. And not only that, all the fruit that her crops had gained from the time that she left her, I want to restore that back to her as well. Well, I want to understand. Somebody may ask, why is it that God blessed this woman so? Well, I want you to understand something. There's some things that's just not written. Don't you know that God wouldn't have blessed her if she had gone into the Philistines and had taken up witchcraft, and she had gone into the Philistine country and had turned her back against God, and she had gone into the Philistine country and become like Lot when he went down into Sodom and Gomorrah, and she had turned like the people that she went to. This woman had a, y'all hear what I'm saying, had a spirit of hospitality, and I can see in my sample sanctified imagination that the same thing that she was doing before she went through the tragedy, the same thing that she was doing before she went through the famine, the same thing that she was doing before all this happened to her, the same thing that she was doing before Corona hit, the same thing that she was doing before people started dying, the same thing that she was doing before they shut the church down, shut the church up, the same thing that she was doing before people stopped worshiping, the same thing that she was doing before people stopped coming to church. She kept on doing what she was doing, and God blessed her. Not only did he bless her, he blessed her for what she had. Y'all hear what I'm saying? Somebody say you're gonna lose. I come to tell you and give you encouragement. You can't lose with the stuff we use. God will always give you more than what you had in the beginning. And if anything is left out, you'll get what's, y'all hear what I'm saying? You'll get what's yours.